Welcome to this P5 video, do's and don'ts as far as studying for the exam is concerned. First of all, do be aware of the context of each question. The examiner gets very upset when students completely ignore what industry he has set the company in. Is it an industry that is growing? Is it an industry that is shrinking? And if the examiner asks you for your ideas, he will obviously want them related to that particular industry. Lots of students give very vague answers which don't really say very much. The examiner wants you to be specific. So, for example, a student might say, you should improve quality. Well, that means one thing if you manufacture cars. It means something completely different, potentially, if you're an accountancy firm. It means something different again if you are a hospital. So be specific. Don't ignore what the industry is. Secondly, how is the company performing? If the company is performing well, there may well be things the company could do. If the company is performing badly, there may be things they are unable to do. So think about what the industry is, what the facts are, what difference does it make as far as your answer is concerned. Secondly, do understand how to apply your knowledge. I'm thinking particularly here of methods of doing things. So, for example, one of the things that you might have to do is calculate break-even. That's been examined on a number of occasions. Now, there is a fairly standard method for you for calculating break-even, but the exact circumstances will differ from question to question. You'll be given slightly different information. So don't just learn how it was done in one question, because in your question that you get, it may be done slightly differently. Similarly, the examiner may say, how would you do something in this particular company? How would this company do something? So in other words, he's asking you to apply some theory. How could a company apply the Six Sigma model of quality improvement? Well, it will depend what the company does. A manufacturing company will not do the same as a service organisation. So think about understanding the theories so you can apply them instead of just slavishly learning them. Do think about what the numbers mean. At some point in the exam, you will be given sets of numbers and you are asked to interpret them. Why did the examiner give you these numbers for this organisation? Very important. If, for example, and this was an old exam question from a number of years ago, you have a question about a company that delivers packages. One of the figures that was given was how many packages were delivered late. Now, that is a very important number to calculate for that particular kind of company. They are there delivering packages to people. It would be very important to know how many of them are delivered late. On the other hand, if you were talking, for example, about an accountancy firm, the number of packages delivered late actually is meaningless, doesn't mean anything at all. So the examiner will ask specific numbers to do with a specific company in a specific industry. And you need to think about why you were given those figures for that company, because then you can interpret them. The numbers that you are given, are they going to be helpful? Let's say, for example, that you have been given information for a company which has only just started. It's only been around for a year. And the other thing that you are given is information for a company that's been in existence for 20 years. And you compare the new company with the old company. Will the numbers be the same? Obviously not. So making that comparison actually doesn't really help you very much. So will the numbers be useful? If not, why not? Because we're comparing them to somebody who's been around for 20 years and we've only been around for a year. Often there'll be numbers that are missing. You may be given just the financial situation, the consolidated income statement, the balance sheet, the cash flow. And the examiner will say, what else would be useful? So if you're only given the financial stuff, it's not that useful. What else would be useful? Some non-financial stuff would be nice. Do practice past exam questions under exam conditions. The exam is very, very time pressured, particularly the calculations. You never seem to have enough time for them. You must practice in advance to get as fast as you possibly can get. And also so that on the day of the exam, if you don't finish things, particularly calculations, you don't panic about it. Otherwise, if you do not practice exam questions under exam conditions, the first time you will realise how time pressured it is on the day of the exam. And that's not a good place to find that out. So practice in advance. Don't just learn answers to past exam questions. One of the examiner's favourite examples of this, from a number of years ago, there was a company that ran a restaurant. And one of the things that the restaurant was interested in was the number of cases of food poisoning. Because obviously if there's a lot of cases of food poisoning, that is a problem that we need to sort out. So you need to know how many there are. Lots of students learned that answer. A few years later, the examiner set a question that was set in a dentist's. So, looking at teeth, etc., etc. What would you like to measure? And a number of students wrote down, I would like to know how many cases of food poisoning there have been, because obviously this is very serious for the organisation. Have you ever heard of a dentist worrying about food poisoning? No. What students done? Learned what was relevant for one kind of company, a restaurant, and simply repeated it for a completely different kind of company, a dentist. Not thinking about the context of the question, not thinking about the industry. Measuring food poisoning in a dentist just doesn't even make any sense. So don't just learn past exam questions. Instead think, why was that a good thing to suggest? Why would food poisoning be sensible to suggest for a restaurant? And then, because it's to do with the quality of the service that's being provided, and then how could you measure quality in a dentist? That's the way to do it. Don't just learn the answers. Please do not expect to pass this exam if you cannot interpret what the numbers actually mean. The only way to do that is to practice. You need to practice past exam questions and to say, in this question, here's what the numbers tell me. In another question, the numbers tell me something completely different. In a third question, something different again. There is no substitute for practicing. It's the only way to do it. Imagine that you have qualified as an ACCA and you have got a client. Or you have just, because you've qualified, you've just got promotion. The client says to you, will you please prepare some figures? Here's all the raw data, prepare the figures. Your boss says the same thing, do a report, here's the raw data. And you do the report, you do all the calculations, you give it to your boss, you give it to your client, and they say, this is very interesting, what does it mean? And you say, I have no idea. I can calculate it, but I don't know what it means. Do you really think you're going to keep that client? Do you really think you're going to keep that job? Do you really think ACCA are going to let you be qualified? Do you really think you're going to pass P5? P5 is about what do the numbers mean. And many students don't really seem like they know what the numbers mean. Well, as I have just mentioned, this is virtually, in fact, this may be the last exam you have got before you qualify. And you can go out to clients and say, I am fully qualified accountant, let me do some work for you. If you don't understand what the figures mean, you're not going to get many clients. And the ACCA is not going to be very impressed with you. So you must interpret what things mean, and the only way to do that is to practice. Similarly, don't expect to pass unless you can come up with solutions. I have looked at these numbers and I have interpreted these numbers, and these numbers tell me the company is doing poorly. Well, that's helpful to the client and that's helpful to the manager, but even more helpful would be, and this is what I think we should do. So be prepared to give suggestions, be prepared to give solutions, and make sure they are practical for the company that you are actually discussing. And finally, don't give up. This paper at times can seem very, very tricky because it's often quite difficult to see how it all fits together. One of the things I do on the course is I actually tell you how it all fits together. But it often seems like it doesn't. So there will be times when you get frustrated with it. There will be times when you get annoyed by it. It is a hard paper to score highly at, I will be honest with you. But to score 50 and to pass is not that bad. It's not easy, I'm not going to lie to you, but it's certainly doable for most students if they've prepared properly. So whatever you do, don't give up. And I wish you the best of luck.